The Daily Express ran a headline this week that stopped the internet cold, not because it was shocking, because it was so transparently disconnected from reality that millions of people paused, read it again, and then absolutely lost it. Royal experts say Meghan is jealous of Kate's popularity. That was the claim. That was what they put their name on. And what happened next is exactly why you should pay very close attention to what I am about to tell you. But here is the part most people completely missed in all of this. There is one specific detail buried in how this story was packaged and sold that tells you something enormous about where the narrative machine currently stands. I will come back to it in a few minutes, because once you understand it, it reframes this entire story from the very beginning. So let us start with what actually happened. The Daily Express, one of the UK tabloids that has spent years functioning as a reliable amplifier of palace-adjacent talking points, published a piece this week framing Meghan as consumed by jealousy toward Princess Kate. The hook was a familiar one: unspecified royal experts claiming to know Meghan's inner emotional state. No named sources, no documentation, no evidence of any kind. Just the claim, stated as fact, laundered through the language of expertise. And the reason this matters more than just another tabloid headline is context. We are now years into a pattern. The same institutions that spent enormous energy trying to make Meghan appear unstable, ungrateful, or failing have now pivoted to positioning her as envious of the very life she chose to leave. Think about what that requires you to believe. That a woman who built a successful acting career entirely on her own terms, who advocated for gender equality at the United Nations before she ever set foot inside a palace, who walked away from one of the most scrutinized institutions on earth and built something new entirely from the ground up, that this woman is losing sleep over someone else's crown. And remember, this is the same woman they previously called too ambitious, too outspoken, too much. Now she is apparently consumed by longing for less. The logic does not hold, it never did. So let us actually look at the record, because the question the Daily Express chose not to engage with is a simple one. Jealous of what exactly? Before Meghan Markle ever stepped into royal life, she had already built something most people spend entire careers chasing: 7 seasons on a major network legal drama, a digital platform called the TIG, with a genuine following built around food, wellness, travel, and women's issues, created and managed entirely by her. An advocacy role with UN Women, delivering speeches on gender equality on international stages, years before she was a duchess. A published children's book that became a bestseller. A career spanning acting, producing, public speaking, and content creation across the global entertainment industry. She was already that before any of this. What looked like a tabloid story about emotion was actually an invitation to compare 2 very different relationships to ambition. And that comparison is not close, but that is just the beginning, and this is where it gets really interesting. Consider what Kate's popularity actually means in practice. Kate Middleton is a figure with significant institutional support, years of palace communications infrastructure, carefully managed media relationships, a press corps that has historically been incentivized to cooperate. And yet her public engagements are relatively sparse, and the gatherings around them are rarely the spontaneous public expressions the coverage suggests. The infrastructure around the occasion is often larger than the crowd itself. Meghan operating with no institutional machinery, no palace communications office, no centuries of accumulated soft power working in her favor, is consistently among the most searched, most discussed, most culturally referenced women on the planet. That is not spin, that is searchable, that is measurable. And what this story is really about underneath the jealousy framing is something the tabloids have not found a clean way to narrativize. The attempt to erase her did not work. And now the only move left is to reposition her as secretly wanting what she left. That detail matters, not because it says anything true about Meghan, but because it says everything about where the opposition currently stands. They had no playbook for this, and people noticed, because they always do. One commenter wrote, "The only direction jealousy could run here is toward a woman who actually built something. And the tabloids know exactly which direction that is." I know, right? There is something in this comment that gets at the real inversion. The jealousy narrative only works if you ignore the entire biographical record of both women, and it turns out most people have not ignored it. Another person wrote, Meghan gave speeches at the United Nations before becoming a duchess. Kate visibly struggles through formal addresses. Who is actually in the stronger position here? Exactly. And the reason this comparison keeps landing is that it is not cruel, it is documented. Public speaking is a recorded skill, it is on camera, it is comparable. And the comparison is not kind to the narrative being sold. How irrelevant are Harry and Meghan again? Someone else pointed out, these headlines only make William and Kate look insecure. Why does everything they do have to be measured against Harry and Meghan if they are supposedly the ones who have moved on? Yeah. That is the question that tends to go unanswered, because the honest answer is uncomfortable. You do not constantly measure yourself against people you have genuinely left behind. Now hold on, because this next part I did not see coming. One person added something quieter that I thought was genuinely perceptive. The funniest part is that someone at a desk somewhere actually believed this was going to land, that people would read it and think, yes, that tracks. Do you see what they did there? Because that is the real commentary, not just on the headline, on the editorial judgment that produced it, the gap between what was intended and what actually happened when real people encountered it in the wild. And I have to share this one because it made me smile. Someone wrote, I needed this laugh today. Meghan Markle, who left, who built, who thrived, is apparently kept awake at night by a woman who cannot complete a public sentence. Sure. And that was the dominant energy across the comments. Not anger, not defensiveness, the particular kind of laughter that comes when a claim is so disconnected from reality that outrage cannot quite get traction. And someone else wrote simply, she left, she built, she thrived. The jealousy narrative requires forgetting all three. We have not forgotten. We have not. Let us be honest about what this pattern of coverage is actually signaling, because I think it is worth naming plainly. For years, the dominant narrative frame for Meghan was disruption, ingratitude, a problem to be managed. When she and Harry left, the prediction, stated openly by several commentators, was collapse, that she would fade without the institution she had left behind. Publicly, the coverage stayed aggressive. Privately, the numbers were telling a different story. The content she produced connected. The audiences she reached were real and growing. The cultural footprint she maintained without any institutional support was, by any measurable standard, significant, and so the frame had to shift. You cannot keep predicting failure when the failure is not materializing. So the new frame became, she secretly wants to come back. She is jealous. She is watching from a distance and longing for what she chose to leave. What this story is really about underneath all of it is the discomfort of watching someone prove a narrative wrong in real time. And let us be honest about something else. They went after Meghan because she was already accomplished before she arrived. She was already that. And the specific combination, her race, her achievements, her voice, her refusal to be diminished quietly, that combination made certain institutions very uncomfortable from the very beginning. What threatened certain people was not her failures, it was her undeniable, documented, pre-existing success. Remember at the start, I told you, there was one specific detail in how this story was packaged that tells you something enormous about where the narrative machine currently stands. Here it is. The Daily Express piece cited royal experts as the source for Meghan's alleged emotional state. No names, no attributions, no documentation of access. Just the word experts, functioning as institutional authority that cannot be questioned precisely because it cannot be identified. That framing is not new, but the fact that it is still the best available framing, that after years of this coverage, anonymous expertise remains the evidentiary foundation for claims about Meghan Markle's inner life, that tells you exactly how thin this has become. They cannot name the experts because naming them would require accountability. And accountability is exactly what this genre of coverage has always worked hardest to avoid. There is something I keep coming back to when I think about stories like this one, about a woman who also understood what it meant to be narrativized against your own reality. Who knew what it felt like to have the story told about her bear no resemblance to who she actually was? This is exactly what Princess Diana wanted for her son. A life chosen freely, a partner who was already something before they became something together, a love story that did not require performance to survive. I know she is looking down from above, so incredibly proud of the man he has become, and of the woman he chose to build that life with, against all odds, against every institutional mechanism, every anonymous expert, every tabloid headline engineered to land and reshape the record. Harry and Meghan are still here, still building, still resonating with millions of real people in ways that cannot be manufactured and cannot be undone with a Daily Express piece. We have watched this play out long enough now to see the arc clearly, and one of those stories is going to outlast the other. It already is, and if you think today's story was something, what is coming next is even bigger, because the broader pattern of how these anonymous expert claims get into the press, who benefits from them, and what the paper trail actually looks like when you follow it carefully. I will have that for you very soon. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the UK tabloids will eventually move on from the jealousy narrative when it consistently fails to connect with audiences? Or will they keep cycling back to it no matter what the public response actually says? Drop your answer in the comments below. I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.